The temptation to peek at the color of the portal was killing Quinn. However, he decided to keep the black sack covering his face. After all, it wasn't worth it. There was no need for him to worry about where the first military base was. He didn't know why he was getting a little obsessed over it. It wasn't like he was working for Pure or the Dalki. They would have done anything just to obtain this type of information. Even if Quinn did know, it wouldn't have helped him anything. Unless he was planning to take on the military, he could never imagine doing such a thing in his entire life. The second his body passed through the portal, he could feel the strange sensation that would usually occur. It felt like your mind was melting. The experience wasn't all that bad, but the imagery was certainly strange. He was surprised that when passing through the portal, this strange sensation didn't wake up the other students. This also meant that the gas, or whatever was used to knock them out, was strong enough to disable them. As he thought about it a bit more, he was kind of surprised that it was able to place Fex asleep. Having decided to not take off the black bag, once through to the other end of the portal, Quinn continued to pretend to be knocked out. His body was chucked and moved, gently sometimes by some, and quite rough by others. As they continued moving about, he consistently heard strange mechanical sounds around him. It was driving him a little crazy, since he was trying to picture what was outside by only using his ears. "I wonder how Leo does it. I would hate it if I became blind." Quinn couldn't help but think this. Eventually, after a couple of hours of being chucked around from place to place, his body wasn't moved for the last 15 minutes. And then, the first student other than him woke up. What the hell is on my head?" the student shouted out. Despite opening his eyes, the only thing he could see was the color black. The thought of the world being taken over entered his mind. This caused him to start screaming, I'm sorry, please don't kill me." The student continued yelling before feeling a bump on the back of his head. "Calm down, will you? You just arrived at your destination," the soldier explained as he took the bag off the student. Because of his screaming, it managed to wake up quite a few students. Very slowly, every one of them started waking up. "Please remove the bags from your heads and stay where you are until further instructions have been made." The voice was recognizable, and it seemed to come from old General Mike. All of the students did as instructed and removed their bags, and for the first time in a while, they could finally see. The students were slightly confused as to where they currently were. There was no clear sky, and all they could see was metal. 1,000 students all stood in a clear open space, with the generals at the front of the large room. "Are we still in the hangar?" a student asked. Quinn couldn't blame the student for thinking that, because it did look like they had never left the hangar in the first place. However, only he knew that they had gone through a portal. All of a sudden, the sound of something coming from behind them could be heard. The pressure head was released, and the light started shining through. When the students turned around, they could see the sides of whatever they were opening up and a metallic platform stretching out. It eventually hit the floor. There was a good 10 meters from the opening before the platform had touched the ground. "Please make your way down the vehicle." Mike continued his instructions while the soldiers at the front led the way. When stepping outside, they finally noticed that they were in the first military base. However, it didn't look all that different from theirs. It was more like a city with certain buildings surrounded by construction. There were mechs out and about, transporting cargo. The main difference was the size of the base itself. It was nearly 2 times more than theirs. However, the most shocking thing they saw so far was the sky. Although it could be seen, it looked slightly different from what they were used to. This vague feeling continued bugging Quinn, however, he couldn't figure out why. What he did notice, though, was the shine going all across them. The entire city seemed to be encased in a large glass-like dome, and around the edges was a high-rise wall, making it impossible to see what was outside of the city unless one was in an airship. Once the students looked behind them, only then did they realize what type of vehicle they were in. It looked like a submarine on wheels. The thing was extremely huge, and it had 16 wheels the size of houses on its side. Quinn then realized what was making all that noise from before. The teleportation device must have transferred them somewhere, and later they needed to be moved via the vehicle in front of them. Once all of the students were accounted for, the vehicle started retracting its platform. Once it was finished, it immediately headed off in a different direction. Mike, Nathan, and Duke went out to greet another soldier. They later followed him until they reached a train stop. Since the base was large, getting to their destination by foot would probably take them a few hours. While riding the train, the students were able to see more of the city. It seemed like the city itself was split up into different sections, and between each section was a small barrier. Each of these sections had soldiers focus and prioritize different things. At one of the sections in the city, they witnessed mechs being built and tested. In the next one, it looked like they had beasts in captivity and were doing some type of experiments. And next, it seems as if they had combat-focused classes, and so on. They then went and passed the city center. It was a large dome-like building that looked like a miniature version of the base itself. It firmly stood at the center. The top of the dome had a flower-like design that looked similar to a poppy. The army decided to use this symbol after the First War. Most of the battles between the Dalki took place on Earth. There was a lot of blood spilled on the battlefield. Once the war was declared over, something strange seemed to happen. On the fields all across the world where most deaths have occurred, fields of poppies grew. In the past, it was said that something like this happened once before. However, it had been long forgotten. Despite that, they still chose to use it as their symbol. This building was the world's government's headquarters. It was where the 8 head generals, the leader, and the big 4 family leaders would meet to make their decisions. It was like they were in control of the world. The train continued moving past the city center and eventually went towards the back of the city, where it seemed a little less busy. They passed another small barrier of some type, and many mechs and soldiers seemed to be standing guard. They entered another part of the city which was separated from the others. Once the train finally stopped, the students got off and continued to follow Mike. After they exited the trains, they could finally see where the event was going to take place. It was an arena that was large enough to host the Olympic Games right in front of their eyes. It was quite round in shape, almost looking like a wheel on its side, and it was made of gletherium. It had a slight tint of blue. What surprised them most, however, was that, on top of the arena stands, 7 large buildings seemed to have been built into the thing, making it look like a crown. The 7 buildings had a clear, open glass that was tinted black. All of them faced inwards toward the arena. On the front, large numbers were starting from 1 and ending at 7. "Okay, since you guys are from Military Base 2, please make your way to the second building," the guide who had been leading the generals spoke to them. "Because you're the first ones here when you finish unpacking your things in your rooms. You are free to explore the area. The buildings here are like hotels. You are allowed to check in and out whenever you want for now. Outside the top of the arena, there are many shops and markets stationed for use. Since you guys won't be participating in the event itself, we wanted to make you all feel welcome. Shop around and have fun. See if there is something you want to do, and treat your stay here as a holiday. Just remember to support your teammates when you can." Quinn was wondering where the others were since he hadn't seen them, although he saw them in the hangar, as they were the first ones to enter. They were shortly separated once again when they moved into the large vehicle. The participants were most likely already in the field or were staying at a separate location altogether. The students followed their teachers to the arena, while the generals had split off in a separate direction. With the large building having plenty of space to accommodate everyone, each student was allowed a room completely to themselves. The atmosphere was quite relaxed. After unpacking his things in the hotel room, someone knocked at Quinn's door. When he opened it, both Vorden and Fex greeted him. "Come on, let's go and explore this place. It's so cool. I've never been to such a nice area before," Fex said excitedly. After shutting the door behind them, the trio went and explored the arena's shops. Meanwhile, at the train station, another train had just arrived, bringing in another set of students from another military base. One of the first people to get off the train was Teacher Silver. The contestants taking part in the intermilitary tournament were taken to the arena ahead of time. This was because the participants would be going through some additional checks that the other students didn't need to do. The other reason was so they could be informed of each event's rules and clarify how each event would work. After all, not all events would be as simple as a knockout tournament. They were all taken on a separate train that was heading to the arena, a participant-only train. Each carriage was separated into each military base full of the second-year and the first-year students. Although some of the second-year students had been through this before, there was still excitement that could be felt in the air. It was an event that only happened once a year. In a way, this was their chance to show their skills to potential factions, as well as get a head start if they were to join the military in terms of ranks. Perhaps even find a mentor to train them, giving them a head start over others. Inside the second carriage were all the second military base participants, and sitting at the front seat with 2 guards by his side was Peter. The second-year students were also towards the back of the carriage and could see what was happening at the front. "Hey, did you see that first year?" a student asked. "Yeah, the guards haven't left his side. Do you think he might be that much of a threat that they need to keep an eye on him all the time? I heard some crazy first years tried going against us this year," another replied. One of the second-year students was looking for that exact student the others were talking about, Momo. Ever since the incident with Vorden in the assembly hall, he had decided to keep his involvement down low. For some reason, during his fight with Vorden, even though he had the upper hand against him, he had to go all out, even using his soul weapon. Something was telling him there was still a chance he could have lost that fight. During that fight, some frightening things happened, one of them being Vorden cutting off his arm. Thinking back to the battle, Momo thought if he would have ever been able to decide that, and even if he did, whether or not he could have gone through with it. There was something wrong with the first-year students that just didn't fit right. Momo wasn't participating in the fighting tournament, but was looking forward to seeing the full strength of Vorden. However, when he didn't spot him on the train, he was incredibly disappointed, and instead saw Peter taking his place, the student they had bullied and forced to go against Vorden. "What are you planning on doing, Duke?" Momo mumbled to himself. He had a feeling that most likely Duke was behind this whole matter. The train had come to a stop, and all the participants were led out of the train straight into the arena. They saw the large buildings on top of the arena. However, they could not meet with their classmates. Instead, they were taken underground in the arena and eventually entered a sizable underground training room. The room was filled with different beast equipment, target tools, gaming equipment, and all sorts. This was a place that allowed the participants to use their abilities freely before they were to participate in their events. As you can see, several rooms are leading to this one. The entrance which you have entered is now locked, and only military personnel who are authorized will be able to pass through. A soldier holding a tablet and containing a scanner over his eye explained. You are free to use this room however you wish before the event. The big day starts tomorrow, so you will have plenty of time to practice. To your right, through the doors, are your sleeping quarters. Feel free to rest whenever you wish. Just behind me is the entrance to the arena. In a moment, we will split you up into groups according to your events, and we will have someone explain and go over the rules. Tomorrow, when your names will be called, and you will be escorted up to the arena. The man then pointed to a large display slightly above him that had hooked onto the wall. We don't want you to be left out, of course. Above, we will be displaying the event to all of you. If you have any problems or concerns, do not hesitate to ask us. With that, the man went off to talk to his team to organize the next step, while the students were free to check out the training room. Many of them went to explore the place, while others wanted to play around with the equipment. Some of the stuff they had back at their bases and used for their training, but some items they had never seen before were excited to test them out and see what they could do. Layla, on the other hand, was busy trying to locate Logan. When looking around, she could see that Peter was allowed to go where he wished inside the training room, but the 2 guards from the train continued to follow him around everywhere. This, of course, gathered quite a bit of attention, and some of the students even tried approaching Peter. Almost immediately, one of the guards would yell at the student to stand back. "Hey, Logan," Layla said, approaching him while looking around to see if anyone was paying attention to her, a habit that was forced into her from her training days. "I was wondering, do you have any idea why they are making Peter fight in this tournament?" Logan looked closely at the 2 guards by Peter's side. He noticed that the equipment they were wearing wasn't of low quality at all. It was at least the advanced level, maybe even higher. If they were to go through this much trouble to guard one student, then it would seem like his hunch was right. "I think they're trying to use this event to lure out the rest of Pure. They think he's one of them after the video we made. It would make sense, and if they believed they cared about him that much to try to snatch him from True Dream, then maybe they would do the same at this event," Logan replied. Hearing this, the sick feeling in Layla's stomach had returned. If that were the case, they would be heavily keeping an eye on Peter, and there might not even be a chance for them to try to save him. Thinking about this, Layla thought about whether or not she should try to get Pure involved. She knew that Peter wasn't a part of Pure. Still, if she were to put a word to her mother, maybe she would help her. Although this thought didn't last long, Layla was currently a rank 100 agent, and she had already called in a big favor from her mother last time. It was unlikely her mother would risk the whole organization for this, once again. Knowing this, she was too afraid even to ask. "I'm sorry, Peter, there's nothing I can do." After about half an hour of the students exploring the training area, they were called and huddled up once again. This time they were divided into groups based on the events they would be participating in, as they were told they would before. Logan was placed into the crafting event, Layla into the arranged event, and Peter into the fighting event. The three of them were now separated from Peter even further. Each group was led to a different section of the room where a soldier would explain the event's details to them. The three main events had the most participating students, since one student was required from each homeroom class. 10 students from the first year and 10 students from the second year. With the 7 schools participating, that meant there were 140 students per the main event. In the fighting event, while the soldier was busy explaining the rules to everyone, everyone's attention was focused on one person. Peter, who still at this moment had the 2 guards by his side. It was clear to them that it must have been such a dangerous event, but now that Peter was closer to all the participants, they could spot something on his wrist. The fact that his level on his watch indicated he was only a level 1. How is that possible? Wait, how is he even in the tournament? The students wanted to question it and ask, but the soldier up front was busy explaining the rules and processes to everyone, and they knew better than to interrupt. "Oh, so it looks like Sam didn't misread that name list. There was a level 1 student in the fighting tournament," Nate said. Unlike the others, Nate wasn't too interested in the mysterious figure. He was far too busy trying to figure out of all the participants here, which one was Larry, the Blood Evolver. Right now, the students didn't have their best equipment, so it was hard for him to tell. "And that's about it for the fighting event rules. Now what we will do is go around and take a stage name from you all. This name will be used to announce you before you enter the arena. Try to pick a name that will strike fear and be remembered by all. After all, not only military personnel will be watching this, many top-tier factions have been invited to this event as well." After the explanation was over, several soldiers went around with tablets held in their hands, gathering each student's required information. Finally, one of the staff had arrived at Peter. "What would you like the name of your ring to be?" he asked. Peter thought about it for a while. He too could tell the soldiers around him were of a higher class than their military base. If there was ever a chance for him to escape, he should have done so when he was alone with True Dream and the other soldiers. Right now, he couldn't escape, and he couldn't even imagine Quinn and the others thinking of a way of saving him. If he were going to be killed after this anyway, he would go down using all his strength. He wasn't just going to throw away the fight. This meant they would find out about his incredible healing abilities. If he were made into a lab rat, he wouldn't tell them anything about Quinn. He still had respect for Quinn for saving his life, and after betraying them once, he wouldn't ever do it again. "Are you sure about your ring name?" the man asked. "It's sometimes nice to have a name related to your ability or one that's easy to remember." "I'm sure," Peter replied. Down on the man's tablet, the name Zombie P was written, a name that, when revealed, would shock the other participants. With the event starting tomorrow, the students were free to do what they wanted for the rest of the evening. There were no strict requirements and even no curfew for the students, which was a first. It truly did feel like they were on a week trip to watch a grand event. Never had they ever been treated like this before. The only rules that were put in place were for students to not leave the arena. Not that it was possible anyway. The arena was located in a separate part of the city, and the only way to get to it was via train, which would go through several different barriers. Stepping off the train, they all noticed the mass amount of security. Leaving this place seemed to be a lot harder than breaking in. However, after living in luxury, they felt like there was no reason for them to try to leave anyway. The three boys, Quinn, Fex, and Vorden, had left the hotel room and headed to the top of the arena. Just like the guide had said, the top of the arena was mostly flat and filled with all kinds of stalls manned by staff. There were coffee stalls, food places, VR games, and all sorts. But what interested most of the students was the equipment stalls. Some of these sold different types of beast gear and armor, as well as items that would go hand in hand with certain abilities while fighting. The boys decided that they would walk around the entire circle, looking at all the shops before committing to buying anything. It was always horrible when one would see something they liked in a shop, only to find something better or cheaper in the next one. "Go on, then," Fex said with his hands behind his back. "What do you think of the sudden change?" "What do you mean?" Quinn asked, confused. "What? Do you mean you can't tell? All of a sudden they're pampering us with nice hotel rooms, shops, equipment, and no curfew?" Fex replied. Quinn hadn't thought about it before. He just felt like the group was currently on a school holiday, like they used to have at school. Near Christmas times and other holidays, school tended to be more relaxed. The world, even the military world, couldn't be all work and no play, could it? "Looks like you figured it out," Vorden said and motioned around. "The whole thing is a ploy for the students. They show and give them a taste of what life is like at the military base. Some of the students will start to think maybe choosing to join the military rather than the faction isn't so bad, especially if they can have a life like this. I hate to say it, but there's always a motive behind everything." The three boys stopped to take a break and were looking over the edge, down at the arena floor. There were thousands of seats, but none of them were for the students. The students would be watching the fight, either from the top platform they were currently on or from their hotel rooms. There were multiple large display screens every once in a while, so it wasn't like they would miss anything. The seats themselves were for all the different factions from the Earth and other planets. They had been invited to see the future generation display their power. It was a good chance for the military to show the world that it was necessary to continue to draft teens into the army, as well as for factions to try to get future talent. "Maybe it's a good thing I'm not fighting," Vorden said. Although these words were spoken quietly with Fex and Quinn's hearing, they both had heard him say these words, and were wondering what he meant by them as he looked at the crowd of empty chairs. Unlike them, Vorden was a talented individual, an original from a good family, but not one of the top four. If he were able to display his strong skills and abilities, he would easily be scouted into a top faction, Quinn thought. His life would be set, and he would have nothing to worry about. So it was strange to see Vorden kind of relieved that he wasn't fighting. The three of them continued walking, and having already done a full circle, they had decided which shops they wanted to stop by. For Quinn, what he truly wanted was a strong or better set of gauntlets to use. His intermediate pair wasn't good enough. However, when they looked around, there was barely anything above the intermediate level. Most equipment at the advanced level or higher would have to be hunted for, or one would need to hire travelers to gather the materials for them. There were a few items, but none that matched what Quinn was looking for. Still, with only boots and gauntlets, there was no harm in increasing his equipment in other areas, one of these being defenses. The best piece of equipment to get would be a type of chest piece. This covered the largest area, and when using his inspect skill, Quinn also found it gave him the most defense points. This time, while walking around, they noticed a lot more students around than before. This was because all of the other military bases had arrived by now, and they too had left to explore. They entered a few shops, and Fex was the first to buy some items. He purchased very small knives that were as large as a finger and had a little ring just underneath the handle. Knowing that he had a string ability, Quinn could imagine Fex being able to do great things with those weapons. While Vorden didn't purchase anything but instead stared at two short swords on the wall, seeing this, a memory came back for Quinn. He had asked Vorden a long time ago if he was to use a weapon, what type of weapon it would be, and he had replied with a pair of short blades. Vorden didn't use beast weapons much, as he seemed to favor elemental abilities, and most elemental ability users didn't really use beast weapons, but still had plenty of beast gear. After inspecting the stats of the swords on the wall and looking at the intermediate blades in Quinn's system shop, he realized how much better the weapons in his shop were. "Don't buy those," Quinn said. "Don't worry, I'll get you something nice soon." Vorden smiled, and the three of them left the shop to head off to the next one. The next shop was a place for Quinn, a shop that mainly focused on armor. A piece had caught his eye before, an intermediate piece that was dark blue and had a silver trim going around the edges. After selling his crystals from the last portal expedition, he now had a total of 4,440 credits to spend. The intermediate piece on the wall was 4,000 credits, so he had enough to spend, but was hesitating whether he wanted to clear his bank like that for one piece of equipment. Inspect. Intermediate Geo-Rock chest armor. No active skills. All stats +1. Defense +20. There were similar priced items in the shop, but this was one of the only ones that increased all stats. Other pieces of equipment improved strength more while giving no stat points to other areas, but this was well balanced. On top of that, it had the most defensive points of the lot. Quinn still hadn't figured out what defensive points did. His gauntlets gave him 8, while his boots gave him 4. If he had the chest piece on top of that, he would have 32 points of defense. Even if he didn't know what to do, the higher number was always better, right? After thinking about it for long enough, he finally had decided to go through with the purchase, reaching out his arm. As his fingertips pressed against the right chest plate, another hand was seen pulling it from the other side. The student to his left turned and looked at Quinn. The first thing that stood out to him was the wristwatch, indicating he was a level 1 ability user. After seeing this, the boy immediately let go. "Please go ahead and take it," the boy said. "You grabbed it first." "You were a little faster than me. You go ahead," Quinn said. With his eyesight, he was able to tell the boy to his right was only a fraction second faster at grabbing the plate. He had no right to claim he grabbed it first. "No, please get it instead of me. I insist, I don't need it," the boy replied once again. The two of them continued like this, while Vorden and Feck stood back and couldn't believe what they were watching. "I guess this is what happens when you have two nice people," Feck said. "Nothing gets sorted." "You think Quinn's nice?" Vorden asked him. Fex thought about it for a while. Most of his interactions with Quinn were nice ones, and after saving his life, he had no other reason but to think he was a nice guy. "You don't?" Fex replied. Vorden didn't reply, but he didn't agree about Quinn being nice. He didn't think he was a bad person, but didn't think nice was the right word. Eventually, after going back and forth, Fex was fed up with watching, and snatched the chest piece, handing it over to Quinn. "Just take it, man. I want to continue shopping." The boy smiled, indicating he was happy for Quinn to take the piece of armor, but before purchasing the item, Quinn wanted to get the name of the student, hoping maybe he would return the favor to him one day. "What's your name?" Quinn asked. "The name's Sam." The system message appeared in front of Quinn's face once again. It was a constant reminder that his health continued to decrease, not that he needed the reminder anyway. Whenever the system message would appear, he would have shooting pains rush through his head and stomach moments before it. His inside felt like they were trying to tear each other apart, and his brain felt like someone was reaching inside and squeezing it. This feeling usually lasted for around 5 minutes before Quinn was able to suppress it. "Hey, are you okay?" Sam asked. "You don't look too good." Fex quickly came over to Quinn's side to give him a helping hand. He was the only one who knew what Quinn was doing, as he had informed him beforehand. Vorden knew something was happening but wasn't aware of the truth and decided to let it be, figuring out that it was most likely some vampire-related business. Quinn handed over his money card and gave it to Vorden to complete the purchase at the desk. The 4,000 credits were exchanged, and the equipment was placed in a fancy metallic suitcase. By the time Vorden had returned with the item, Quinn had mostly recovered from the pain. "Well, I hope you start feeling better," said Sam. "I'll see you guys at the tournament. Maybe we can meet up and watch it together." Sam didn't have many friends at his military base, being quite the low level himself as a second year. With Nate participating in the fighting tournament, Sam was pretty much on his own, so he thought it would be nice to enjoy the event with some others that wouldn't be quick to judge, being low level themselves. "Yeah, that sounds good." Quinn managed to crack out a smile at the last bit of pain started to fade to the back of his mind. The four of them left the shop together and were ready to part ways as they continued to explore. As soon as they took a few feet away from the shop, they could feel something strange, as if their hair strands stood upright. "We're being followed," Fex whispered. "I know, a group of 5, Vorden replied. The 3 boys weren't the only ones that noticed this. When Sam turned around to check on the 3 boys, he could also see that a group was strangely following them from behind. "What are they planning?" Sam couldn't help but decide to get involved. He knew if Nate were here, he would have tried stopping whatever was about to happen. As expected, the group of students suddenly decided to appear and block the 3's path. The boy at the front had the sides of his hair cut short and a purple streak running down the middle. He quickly glanced down at the 3 watches before deciding to approach them. After confirming all of their ability levels were lower than his, a smile appeared on his face. "Well, what do we have here?" the student said as he got closer. Well, we're a little short on money, you see, and we were kind of hoping to buy something from one of these shops. I had my eye on that chest piece for a while, and when I saw someone else buy it, it just rubbed me the wrong way." The student then got right up to Quinn's face as he said his next words. "Especially when I see a weak level 1 like you getting something like this. It would be useless in your hands. Inspect. Name, Zach Lee. Ability level 6. Transformation ability." Using the inspection skill, Quinn was able to figure out the level of all the members of the opposite group, even when they were hiding their watches. It made sense why the student Zach was confident. He was a level 6 ability user, and everyone else around him was around a level 4 and 5. As a group, they seemed quite strong. After they had seen that, both Fex and Quinn were only level 1s, even with Vorden being with them. They didn't even think they had a chance of losing. Right now, Vorden had a random ability of a level 4 user he had touched, so his wristwatch was displaying that number. So Zach and his group had even more confidence that the group faced no such threat in front of them. Using his right hand, Zach placed it on top of the metallic case in Quinn's and tried to pull it away using all his strength. When he tugged, though, there was no movement, and his hand slipped off from the metal case. The smile on his face dropped. Quickly, Zach grabbed onto the case again and tried to pull it out of Quinn's hand again, this time getting a more firm grip on the case. But when Zach tried to pull away, a tight grip was felt around his hand, which gripped the case. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Quinn said slowly. "This is mine." Zach's group of friends behind had no clue what was going on, and were still smirking away at the thought of the helpless level 1s having their expensive gear taken away. "Why is this person making me feel sick when I look him in the eye?" Zach thought. Zach had carefully watched Quinn and his friends enter the shop. Even before they had purchased the equipment, he had taken note of their levels. It came as a big surprise when he found out a level 1 user could purchase intermediate gear. Then a thought hit him. Perhaps he was someone from a prestigious, or at least a wealthy family. They had been cursed with a son that was only able to produce a low amount of MC cells, never being able to get past level 1. At that point, the only thing one could do was purchase beast gear to help them on their journey through life. Having made this prediction, Zach never thought a reaction like this would come from Quinn. "Hey, 5 against 3 is a bit unfair, don't you think so? Maybe we should even up the sides a little," Sam said as he walked over. Sam, too, had thought the same thing as Zach when he saw Quinn. The only difference was that Sam thought he could relate to Quinn. He was one of those very people, a person who was unable to progress any higher in his ability level despite being able to purchase books at a higher tier. His body had already hit the MC cell limit. Seeing Sam come over, Zach's group of friends behind him started to get more aggressive and were getting ready for a face-off. As the tension rose in the air, it felt like either side was going to strike first. However, both Fex and Vorden were worried about a different matter. For some reason, Quinn was upset at the actions that had just occurred. It made sense anyone would be. The only difference was, Quinn had a critical secret he needed to hide. "I think I know what you mean about him not being nice now," Fex whispered over to Vorden. Even Quinn himself felt his actions were a little stranger than usual. Of course, he always wanted to punish people who did things like this, but right now was not the time, especially with as many military personnel around as there were. Still, Quinn refused to let Zach's wrist go, and he was starting to grip it harder and harder. Zach could feel this, and the pain was starting to get to him. He wanted to squeal or grunt a little, but was too afraid the others would laugh at him if he began to give in to the pain and were to make strange noises. "What do I do?" he thought, looking for a way out of this. "Hey, what is going on here?" a deep voice said from the side. A soldier had appeared, wearing a military uniform. "There is to be no fighting during the week's stay here, do you understand? If you disobey, we will have to lock you up for your remaining time here. If there is a dispute, I suggest you settle it through some other matter. I'll be keeping an eye on you," the soldier said as he walked back off, continuing on his way to where he was going before. When the soldier had arrived, Quinn's grip had loosened, and Zack managed to break free in a split second. After hearing the words of a soldier, an idea popped into his head. Maybe there was a way to settle this and get the item he wanted. More than that, Zack felt a little humiliated and wanted to get his pride back. "Fine, I have a little suggestion to make. If you are interested, why don't we play a little game? Your guys versus mine," he said with a smile. It was clear they were up to no good, and what reason did they have to go along with their little game? "Just get out of here before I—" Just then, a person from Quinn's right side stood in front of him. "Sounds interesting. What do you have in mind?" Before Quinn could even reject their offer, Fex had chimed in at the last second. The word game had interested him greatly. Besides, they had already finished their shopping and explored the area. Other than going back to their hotel room to rest, there was nothing they could do. Fex didn't care about the results of the events. Besides, they weren't a part of it, so this might have been the only bit of fun he would be able to experience. "Since you guys seem more confident than your usual low levels, I thought this might interest you." Zack and the group started to walk off, and Fex followed without a second thought. The others looked at each other and shrugged their shoulders, deciding to go along. "Don't worry, they can't really do much, and you can always refuse," Sam said. After following Zack and his group for a while, they were eventually led to the game section of the platform. It looked like he did mean that they would play a game, and it wasn't a metaphor for something else. The stall they stopped at had several different booths that were open for the outside public to see. Inside the booths was what looked like an old-fashioned training machine. It was a standard upright thick pole made of metal. The pole was split up into 6 different sections, and each one had another pole sticking out of it. Quinn watched one of the students carefully. A digital countdown appeared above his head. 3, 2, 1. When the timer reaches 0, a buzzing sound was heard. "Game started, level 3. The metal pole started to twist the different sections of its body. However, not all of the sections moved in the same direction. The very top section twisted, and the pole from the top was now coming towards the student's head from the left side. At the same time, the bottom section of the pole had twisted in the opposite direction, making the extended pole attack from the right side. At the same time, the student lifted his left hand and right leg, blocking both of the attacks. The pole twisted again and continued to twist and turn to allow attacks to come from all different directions, aiming at the student's body. That's when Quinn also noticed there was a small ring where the student was standing. "I see, so he has to block all the attacks without stepping out of the ring," Quinn thought. "The higher the level, the faster and more varied the attacks." "My suggestion is we bet that beast armor of yours by playing the game," said Zack. "Each person here will count as a life for our team. The first person will start at level 1 and keep going up until they are eliminated. Then the next person from the team will start from the level they have left off. Then whichever team finishes on a higher level wins," Zack explained. With this type of game, it was best to allow the most skilled person to go last. The reason for this is because the person can watch how the one before them failed. They could get a sense of timing for the machine as well as witness the varied attack patterns. "Your team only has 4 people, so one of you can go twice," said Zack. "The reason for choosing this game is because it requires us not to use our abilities. I didn't want to pick something where we would win. This will just be a test of reflexes and quick thinking on your feet." "I don't like it," Vorden said. "I don't have a problem with the game. I think any one of us here will be able to beat your whole team. The problem is, what's in it for us? We gain nothing from this bet, as the beast gear is rightfully Quinn's in the first place." While watching Vorden speak, he was amazed at how much confidence Vorden had. He didn't stutter when speaking in front of these higher levels, and when pointing to his teammates, it seemed like he was genuine when he said he thought any of them would be able to beat them in the game. "I thought you might say that, of course. I wouldn't just be putting up nothing on our side." Zack reached one of his fellow teammates' bags and pulled out a beast crystal. It was slightly clear in color, and after Quinn used the inspect skill, he was able to tell it was an intermediate beast crystal. "Lithy intermediate beast crystal, compatible with an item from the shop." After using his inspection skill, though, another message that he hadn't seen before appeared. After selecting the message, the system immediately took him to his shop, showing him a single short sword. One of the swords in his shop required this very crystal to be crafted. The weapons from Quinn's shop were of higher quality than one could find in the marketplace. The problem was that nearly all of the weapons on it required him to gather specific items to create them. As he was still a student, he was unable to travel to other beast planets to hunt for these things. For now, he decided he would leave it for the future, after he had left the school. Coming across one of the materials to create a weapon was a golden opportunity for him. "We'll play your little game," Quinn said. "Excellent," Zack replied, not doubting for a second they were going to lose. Outside the arena on the bottom floor, Leo stood outside. He had come from the underground area after checking on the participating students. The real reason why he was there, though, was to check on Peter. He had a hand in helping the students during the matter with True Dream. There was a chance that using their strange and strict methods, the military would find out he was also involved in the case. He wasn't worried, but at the same time he had to prepare for the worst. "Originally there was one, and now there are three," Leo thought. He was thinking of the strange auras that he had sensed. At first it was only Quinn. Later Peter's aura had changed, and then a third student had arrived with the same aura. With his ability, he could tell they weren't human, or at least not fully or not the same. "The military might be stepping on their toes in something they can't handle." Leo had a hunch that if these people weren't human, they were going to publicly execute one of their kind. Then maybe they would come and try to save him, or at a later date, these actions could cause a lot of trouble, possibly even another war. The human race couldn't handle fighting the Dalki and another unknown entity. If it came to it, maybe the better decision would be for him to save Peter himself. From just underneath Leo's belt, he had a small pouch where he pulled out a small little flask. It was the one that had been found at the last portal expedition. He still didn't know who it belonged to, but he did know it was a strange and powerful item. The aura surrounding it was similar to his weapons. For a simple flask to be made out of high-quality beast material would be a waste. It had to be something special, he thought. He thought that he might have missed something or a special use for the flask. He unscrews the lid from the top of the flask. The contents inside the flask remained the same, as Leo didn't want to throw it away. He swirled it around, looking at the red liquid inside. "That's blood. I wonder if all of this is linked somehow." As he said those words, he could hear the sounds of footsteps rushing towards him. Leo quickly activated his ability, allowing him to cover a wider range. After doing this, he was even more worried than before. For some reason, the figure's aura seemed to be masked. He could still see the figure, but it seems like whatever was heading in his direction was able to suppress it. Eventually, the footsteps slowed, and now he could get a clearer view of it. Seeing it had a human-like shape. Leo calmed down a little, but was still prepared for anything. The figure was now in front of Leo, but of course, Leo could only tell someone was there and not what they looked like. "Where did you get that flask?" a female voice said. All 9 of them rented out a booth and headed over to the area. The people who walked by simply ignored what was going on. There were too many people in one section. It blocked outsiders from being able to see anything that was going on. Although they did find it strange that so many people were in one booth, it still wasn't interesting enough for them to actively try and find out what was happening. Now, all that was left was to decide who from which team would go first. "Please let me do it," Sam volunteered himself. "I know you guys just met me and don't know, but those guys rubbed me the wrong way. Think of it as a freebie. You can observe in the meantime, and when I get stuck on a level, it should make things easier for you guys." Since Sam was insistent and sincere, the others found it hard to refuse his offer. In addition, Quinn liked the look of determination in his eyes. "Sure, go ahead," Quinn responded. They were confident that they wouldn't lose, especially against some of the other students, but against people like these that had never tried to get through life with their hard work, then no, they wouldn't allow themselves to lose to people like this. Sam, on the other hand, volunteered because he was worried that the others might humiliate themselves. He could tell by the stripes on their shoulders that they were only first years. It was most likely that they had never played a game like this before. The game was more difficult than it looked. One would have to be able to keep their concentration at their best while also multitasking. If he could beat everyone from the opponent's side, then there would be no need for anyone else to step in. "Zippy will go first," Zack said. The student approached the metal pole while the rest of the players stepped back a few meters away from the room, just outside the game zone. Zippy was a level 4 ability user. He was the lowest on the other team. 3, 2, 1, level 1 start. The game had started. The top 2 sections of the metal pole started twisting. At first, the machine was incredibly slow, and Zippy was able to block 2 attacks. This continued for a little while. Quinn noticed that only 2 parts of the machine were moving. This was due to the machine only being set at level 1. What Quinn also realized was the other part of the machine would only move once the person placed their hand or leg down. After blocking the attack, if one were to keep their arms up, then the machine wouldn't start until it was able to sense that the arm had gone back down again. 45 seconds had passed. All of a sudden, the machine started speeding up for the last 15 seconds. Zippy's expression changed as a little bit of sweat started running down his face. Beep! 1 minute had passed, and the sound of the buzzer had gone off. This indicated he had passed. Zippy let out a big sigh while he wiped the sweat from his forehead. He walked back to his teammates. "Good job, Zippy. If you couldn't even pass level 1, then I was going to ask why you were still hanging around us," Zack said. Zippy held his head down when he walked past the other. He had no response to give. Next was Quinn's team. "Whoa, go on, Pam," Feck shouted while clapping his hands. "It's Sam," Vorden corrected him, slapping his head, and slightly embarrassed as to why he was even with such an idiot. Even though the game had started, Sam didn't look nervous at all. Instead, he was calmly breathing and keeping it steady while blocking all of the attacks. "He's quite good, at least he's been taught well," Vorden commented. Quinn thought the same. Once he concentrated and closed his eyes, he was able to focus on his hearing. When he listened to Sam's heartbeat, he could tell it was stable, unlike the contestant from before. Even during the last 15 seconds, Sam stayed the same. When Sam walked back to the others, they each gave him a high five and congratulated him on a good job. "Pfft, look at them, celebrating when they only passed level 1. They're acting as if they've already won," Zack said in an annoyed tone. It was Zippy's turn once again. This time he was on level 2. On this level, 3 of the different sections started moving. This caused the player to also move up and down, blocking the attacks not only to their head, but also the ones headed towards their body. Zippy was doing well so far, with only 15 more seconds to go. Just like last time, it sped up. In the last quarter, Zippy blocked the first 2 hits and lifted his hand to block an attack to the left of his face, and then another to his right. This was when the others started noticing something wrong. Although the machine strikes weren't all that powerful, if the attack wasn't properly blocked, it would still hurt. It was quite similar to someone giving a soft padded punch, especially since the bars themselves were covered. Yet for some reason, Zippy's hands were shaking. When the 3rd bar swung towards the right side of his rib, Zippy hesitated since he thought back to the words Zack said. His concentration broke, and it ruined his form. His movements became as erratic as he was nervous. This slip-in was more than enough. He was just a split second late in blocking the blow, heading towards his ribs. "Beep, beep, beep. Game over." As he walked back to his team, he hung his head in shame. He didn't even bother making eye contact with Zack. Zack, too, didn't say anything to him. It was a stupid mistake someone at their level should never make. In his mind, Zippy wanted to blame Zack for placing too much pressure on him. However, he knew that his words would be pointless. Now it was time for Sam to go again. Just like previously, he dealt with the multiple bars coming towards him with ease. When the game started speeding up towards the end, his breathing was a little quicker, but it didn't matter. His pace was incredible, and it looked like he was playing some sort of rhythm game. "Beep! Level 2 completed." Instead of heading back to the others, Sam remained in the game room. This was because of their agreement beforehand. After another member from the opposing side was eliminated, the other one would stay and go on to the next level. Like this, the other team would have a slight advantage. This was how the game worked. For example, Zippy lost for being hit in the ribs. By seeing this, Sam would be able to observe and dodge the same strike. Not that it would have helped much at this stage anyway. "Level 3 begin." The machine started once again, and there seemed to be a big jump in difficulty from level 2 to level 3. All 6 of the sections were moving this time. Having just completed the last round, Sam was a little tired. However, he still managed to persevere by blocking each of the bars. When the last 15 seconds came, the machine's speed looked like it almost doubled. Left block, right block, knee raise, right block again, elbow down. Sam thought about every move, but this was his downfall. Before, since he had enough time to think about everything he was doing, it worked out for him. Now that the attacks were too fast, he forgot to breathe as he was too focused on thinking and blocking. And suddenly, he needed to gasp for air. When taking in a deep breath, a bar came swinging out and whacked him in the face. Game over." Sam looked disappointed in himself. He thought he would be able to help out the others more, and yet he was only able to eliminate a single player from the other team. He realized that playing this time of the game on your own and as a team was a little different. When you were on your own, you could start the same level again while remembering the speed and attack patterns. You could easily get better and adjust to the game's level. It wasn't that Sam couldn't pass level 3, but he would have needed to play it a couple more times before being able to do so. With the team mode, they only had one chance. Each player only had a single life. "I'm sorry," Sam said as he walked back to the others. "Don't worry about it. I learned quite a bit from watching you," Quinn said, not taking his eyes off the machine. Sam felt like it was all over after realizing the difference between playing as a team and as a single player. He never imagined that they could win anymore. Instead, he started praying to the karma gods, hoping that their opponents would get what they deserve and somehow lose the match. Another student from Zach's team walked forward and started the game. While Sam was busy playing the game, this student had been practicing at the side while trying to match the machine's speed. Now that he had a good idea of what the attacks would be like, everything seemed to work out for him. After the minute had passed, the game was over, and they completed level 3. "All right, who's going next on your team?" Zach asked them with a sneer on his face. While clenching his hand like a fist like he was getting into a fight, Fex stepped forward. "Ha-ha! Time to show you how easy this little thing is." Before he could get into the game area, a hand appeared on his shoulder and pulled him back. "Let me take this one," Quinn said. Team standing by the sidelines. It came as a surprise for them when they saw who was volunteering. The two people going at it this time were both level 1s. If this was an ordinary team, then Zach wouldn't have thought too much of it. After all, it made sense to allow the weaker one to go first. However, level 1s couldn't be considered weak. They were beyond that. From the beginning, the only two people that the group focused on were Vorden and Sam. They even thought that the other two would have forfeited after knocking them out. Playing against level 1s was just a waste of time. But still, it looked like Fex willingly stepped back, allowing Quinn to take the stage. Vorden, on the other hand, didn't bat an eyelid at the level 1 making his way into the arena. Sam felt that maybe they were letting everyone have a go at the thing, or perhaps allow Vorden more chances to see how the machine worked. Although their chances of winning were slim from the looks on their faces, they hadn't given up yet. Meanwhile, Zach was taken aback by the sudden situation. The very same student who emanated a huge amount of confidence before was still displaying that same amount of confidence right now. For some reason, he felt that it was natural that he tried his best in avoiding eye contact with Quinn. For a moment, he gave in to his urges and looked up. When his eyes met with Quinn's, he instinctively knew that this was a bad idea. A tingling sensation could be felt at the back of his brain. It was almost as if it was trying to burst out of its skull and run away. "What's wrong with you, Zach? Get it together!" Quinn entered the game zone and took a relaxed stance while in the circle. The others felt like it was all a show. They simply couldn't believe why he was extremely calm. "He'll be out in 10 seconds, one of them said. "Oh yeah, do you want to bet on it? I reckon 30 seconds for 10 credits, another replied. "He should be confident for a reason, right? I think 45, just before things start speeding up. Zach, do you want to get in on this bet?" Zach didn't respond to them. Truthfully, he didn't want to tell the others his answer. Something was telling him that Quinn would be able to clear the entire thing. The game began, and the other group was carefully watching the timer instead of Quinn himself. They were all hoping to cash in their winnings. Once the timer went past the 10-second mark, a moan could be heard since one of them lost the bet. The seconds continued to pass by as it eventually crossed the 30-second mark. "I can't believe it!" The game entered the final 15 seconds. Now that all of their bets failed, they decided to look at Quinn. However, as they observed him, they found things to be quite odd. It still looked as if he was just casually standing in the same spot. The bars came swinging at him, and as one of them was about to hit him at the very last second, he would be able to block the attack with his arm. He would retract his limb and then repeat the same thing to the rest of the bars. Watching Quinn do this was painful for Sam's heart. It was as if someone was walking on a tightrope. Every single attack seemed to have been barely blocked at the last second. Sam watched at the very beginning of the round. Even when the machine moved at a slower pace, the attacks still looked as if they were just about to hit Quinn. Because of how things were going, he expected that Quinn would lose in the final 15 seconds. Beep! The sound of the game ending and the level being completed was heard. Sam's prediction was completely wrong. "Whoa, will you look at that? He did it! Well, good news, there's no way he's getting past the next one, right, Zach?" Once again, Zach didn't respond. What the others failed to realize was that Quinn wasn't even out of breath. He didn't have a single sweat on him. Although the game was only a minute long, with the unusual amount of intense concentration and fast movements, it was still similar to someone doing a sprint. The next participant from Zach's group entered. It was time for level 4 to begin. All 6 compartments started moving at a faster pace. Not only that, but the machine also seemed to be doing more double attacks. It was attacking 2 different places at once. Even though the student was doing well, everyone could tell he was barely hanging in there. When the machine entered the final quarter, the first strike struck his foot, knocking him out of the game. There were now 3 contenders left, including Zach on the other team. Like before, Quinn entered the game and started in a similar way he left things. It even seemed like he never left the game. Quinn continued blocking each strike just before it would hit him. He would lift his limbs to block and simply place them straight back down. The reading on his watch, it has to be fake. Or maybe he's some sort of martial art expert or something. No wonder he's so confident. He's going to complete this, isn't he? Zach's thoughts were screaming in his head. The timer continued going up and entered the final quarter like before. But suddenly, a strange feeling rushed through Quinn's head, and at the same time, an abrupt pain in his stomach. "Not now," he groaned out. 29 of 95 HP. It had been an hour since the last message had appeared. The shooting pains in his body could be felt. Instinctively, Quinn grabbed his head and leaned forward. This resulted in the bar striking him both on the head and stomach simultaneously, thus eliminating him from the game. "Game over." Fex quickly rushed out to see if Quinn was okay. He realized what the problem might have been. "Hey, why don't you just rest? It must be tough going through what you're feeling right now. Just leave it to me. I can handle these guys." Upon seeing Quinn lose, it was a relief to Zach. He didn't know what just happened, but someone must have wanted him to win this game. It was clear that Quinn was going to pass it the same way he did on the previous one. "I knew he would eventually lose. It was only a matter of time," the others commented. They misinterpreted the situation and simply thought that the game was too much for Quinn to handle. With Quinn knocked out of the game, it was time for someone from Zach's team to enter again. This time, the person managed to clear the level 4 stage. "Well, who's next?" Zach asked. Fex stood up and took the mantle. This time, he felt someone tug on his sleeve. When he looked down, he noticed it was Quinn. "You're going to do it again, aren't you?" "One of us can go twice, remember?" Quinn said. "Fine," Fex responded, as he sulked his way back to the rest of his team. After feeling like he suffered an unjust loss, he wanted to finish what he started. Since Zach and his group decided to target him and had even gone as far as trying to snatch his newly bought equipment, if anyone was going to show them their place, it was going to be Quinn. When they saw who was walking up to the stage, they all started to laugh. Everyone else apart from Zach, that was. "I forgot about that stupid rule. Why didn't we just make it 4 versus 4? He quietly complained in his mind, but things were too late now. This time, when the game started, Quinn chose to take on a fighting stance. It was the first time he had done so since he started playing the game. Before, he merely treated this game as a type of practice, trying to see how much he could block things before the very last second. Now that he had no second chances and the will to win rose in his heart, he chose to properly block everything. Even before the machine was able to move, Quinn could already hear the sound of each session activating. With the slightest movement from the contraption, Quinn placed his hand out. To the others, it almost looked like he was attacking the machine. Before the bars on each station had the chance to fully move, Quinn had already hit them. The machine would slightly nudge in certain sections, but it never had the chance to perform a full strike. If he was to hit one section of the machine before it even moved, then the game would have been declared a loss for the player. It was done like this, so people would stop using this type of tactic. However, the game over sound never appeared. Instead, the beeping sound that indicated a completed stage resounded out. "Who the hell is this person?" Sam muttered out. At the same time, he also wished Nate was here to witness what he had just seen. Not even Nate would have been able to display something so great. "If you were here, Nate, I think you would have found a new person to be excited about." After witnessing such a display, Zach figured out something. If he wanted to win, then he needed to do something drastic.
Hi, Quinn here. Wondering what happens next? If you want to jump the queue and unleash all episodes, click on the link here and install the Pocket FM app.